to help them really embed it into their service and make it part of the work that they do on a regular basis. Recently, we had a fund available as lockdown started. We had a COVID-19 fund that was trying to help organisations that suddenly couldn't reach their service users to then transition to a sort of digital approach so they could carry on working with them. So last year, 100% Digital Leeds bid to run a project as part of the NHS Widening Digital Participation Programme. Sorry, it's a mouthful. In partnership with Good Things Foundation. And the programme as a whole is about finding ways to help different groups improve their health using digital technology. And the programme that we ran was focused on people living with dementia. So it was about finding ways that we could help people living with dementia to sort of improve their health and well-being using digital tech. And it was very much a Pathfinder program. So it was about trialing different things, just really testing things out to see what worked. So that we didn't really have a direction to start with. So one of the first things we had to do was to figure out what our approach was going to be. So we started out with a couple of user design workshops. We had one with stakeholders who work with dementia groups and people with dementia. And then we had another for carers and people with dementia that we ran to kind of talk through some of the wider challenges that people face and to kind of narrow it down into things that we thought we wanted to focus on as part of the project. So we came up with a few things that we wanted to try. And then we went on to map the current provision for dementia across the city. So the memory cafes, the dementia carer support groups, really finding all the places across the city that were working with people with dementia so that we could go work with them and get really involved with our target group. So we partnered with Carers Leeds and memory cafes across the city so that we could attend their groups and really get to know some of the people that we were trying to help. Because one of the things that was really important to the success of this project was building those relationships with the carers, finding out about their experiences, the challenges that they faced, and really listening to what it was that would help them. One of the things that is always very important as part of our work in general is trying to work with people and not doing things to people. It's about finding the ways that people are going to benefit and helping them to see the benefits of being online, rather than saying, you need to do this because you need to apply for benefits online or things like that. It's very much about hooking people in with the things that are going to benefit them directly. So we attended a lot of carer support groups across the few months that we were running the project. So me and Rachel Ben, who is one of our digital inclusion coordinators, we really spent a lot of time at these groups talking to people and sort of gradually introducing the tech. So we would go along at first, kind of introduce what the project was, say who we were and what we were planning to do, and kind of get them used to the idea that these were the things we wanted to try with them. So the things that we trialed as part of the project, we set up Facebook groups for the carer support groups. So these were closed groups where carers could talk to each other outside of sessions. And they used them to talk about all sorts of things, just sharing day-to-day sort of challenges, supporting each other, talking about the other tech that we were introducing into the groups. With the carer support groups, we also trialed out voice technology. So we loaned Alexa Amazon shows to 12 carers across these carer support groups for them to take home and try out. We demonstrated them at the groups and then gave them suggestions for some of the things that they could do with them, helped them set them up, and then they took them home and tried them out. We trained digital champions within a lot of the groups, and that's really important, is to have people who are championing the use of tech within the groups as sort of advocates early on, a lot of people were sort of hesitant to try out, but there were kind of 1 or 2 people within the groups who were very, very willing. So by kind of encouraging discussions around technology within the groups, and we attended, the people who'd had sort of good experiences talking about them, discussing the ways that they benefited, really helped to convince some of the people who were initially more reluctant. One of the things that we came across a lot early on was that people felt they didn't have the time to try things out. Their focus was very much that their loved one that they were caring for was the most important thing, was their priority, and that this was kind of a distraction that they didn't need. But having heard about some of the ways that people had really benefited, they kind of came onto the idea that it might be something to help them rather than an extra burden on them. So, for example, there was one lady we worked with. She was caring for her father, and she talks about how her phone was just full up of reminders. So reminders for his medication, reminders for his exercises. Every conversation that they had was kind of her reminding him that he needed to do something, to eat, to drink. But then when she borrowed an Alexa from us, she was able to transfer a lot of the reminders to there. So even something as simple as having just the automated reminders for when he needed to take his medication, do his exercises, it was no longer something that she was sort of stressed out by with the constant reminders from her phone. And he also just got on really well with using it. She was able to customize it so it talked to him by name. And he was able to kind of use it himself. She put up a little sign in front of it, which is something a lot of people tried out, reminding them how to talk to the Alexa, because obviously it needs like a wait word for them to be able to use it. So having the little prompt there meant that a lot of people who had dementia were also able to interact with these devices. One lady's husband, he has always loved music, but it got to the point where he wasn't able to operate their sound system anymore. It was too frustrating for him. And having the Alexa in the house meant that he could, because it's voice technology based, he was able to use it to play music again. And kind of got that bit of his life back, where she'd say it's just wonderful to be able to come home and the music's already on, which is something that he hasn't been able to do for a long time. So it was great to hear about some of those positive experiences that people had, but also in encouraging them to discuss them, it really helped us to sort of share experiences between the groups and pick out the things that worked for people. We created little sort of cheat sheets of people with suggestions of what they could do, and sort of added to them as we got feedback from people. We also trialed VR as well as a sort of reminiscence and relaxation. So for some people with dementia, it works quite well as a kind of, if they get agitated or they get upset, having a sort of a VR space where they can go and calm down was quite useful, and they really enjoyed it as well. We took that to a few memory cafes, and being able to experience places where either they'd wanted to travel when they were younger, or had traveled to in a VR space, was a really great experience for them. So that was lovely as well. Oh yeah, sorry. So for particularly with things like the Facebook group that was set up, so we completed this work, there's now a report available, but that doesn't mean that it's over, especially because we're now in a situation where the groups can't meet in person, especially when lockdown first came in and groups were being cancelled and people weren't able to meet and get the support. These particular things like the Facebook group, and the fact that these groups had digital becoming embedded in their service already, meant that they were in a better position to then kind of transition to being able to talk to their users online. People had the online spaces that they could go to meet with each other, which they wouldn't necessarily have had if they hadn't kind of started to make the move to being online before lockdown started. So it's really helped some of the groups to be able to continue to work, and we are as a team helping more and more community organisations at the moment to transition to being online while they can't meet with their users. So it's great to see the work being so like immediately useful right now. So there's a report, and there's also a how-to guide that we've got that kind of takes through the step-by-step process that we went through during this project, that people can, if they're wanting to repeat it, can take a look at. And they're both linked on our website at digitalinclusionleads.com if you're interested. So that's everything from me. Thank you. Back to Claire.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such sorry, losing my voice. Such wonderful work that you're doing, Sarah, with the digital inclusion team, really reaching people who need that extra support. Thank you. So we will send out that link as well with the recording of the meeting as well. Oh gosh. Right, I think I can speak now. So we will send out that link as well to you, and feel free to ask Sarah any questions as well in the chat. So we're going to go over to our wonderful speaker today, which is Sally.
Hello.
I can't wait. Hello, Sally. How are you today?
I'm good. I love hearing all those stories. I think it's the bit about technology I like. It's the impact it has and the benefits it brings to people. I'm not actually that interested in the nuts and bolts. That's all a bit dull to me, but hearing about how it can make people's lives better is the stuff I'm really interested in.
Yeah, me too. And I think the team are very, very people-centred, aren't you? So it is listening to people and what they need and then seeing the benefits, which is just amazing. So really looking forward to your talk, Sarah. Sally, sorry.
All right.
Away you go. Thank you.
I shall attempt to share my screen now. So I think it's that one. Bear with me. How's that looking? Yeah. Excellent. Okay, let me just start the slideshow. Okay then, so this session today is leadership lessons from real life, and it's really my story of being single teenage mum and my journey into as a woman in tech. First of all, a little bit about me. I like to describe myself as a northern lass, tea drinking northern lass with a passion for technology, for service and for people. I'm currently working in the NHS Digital as Head of Live Services, a relatively new role. I joined them on the 4th of May, but that's a whole other session, joining an organisation during a lockdown. I've previously worked in higher education as an IT service management professional, and as I said today, I'm just going to share with you my journey and some lessons that I've learned along the way. So some of them are lessons about being a woman in tech, and some of them are just general lessons in life. But to be able to do that, I've got to go right back to the beginning. And I have to be really honest and say my life did not get off to a great start. I had quite a difficult and traumatic childhood. My parents divorced when I was 4, I think, and by the time I was 15, I'd moved home about a dozen times, and my mum was on a 4th marriage by that point. So not that surprising then that I turned into a bit of a teenage tearaway. And at the age of 16, I found myself, I was doing 6th form, but ended up homeless, and was living in a homeless hostel. I was working as a waitress. There's a song in that somewhere, but trying to study for my A-levels as well. And whilst I was trying to stay on the straight and narrow, life was really chaotic, and I started to make some really, really bad choices and some really bad decisions. So no massive surprise then when a few months later I realised I was pregnant. So I went into school, and pretty much that was it. There's no provision in those days, in the early 90s, no provision for teenage mums. There was not even any conversation about extending my education or returning back to education. That was it. It was a church school. They didn't have teenage pregnant mums in school, and off I went. And to be honest, I thought that was it in terms of education. I'd always been quite academically bright, and my teachers were quite aspirational for me. But honestly, I did not have those aspirations for myself. People like me didn't go to university. Nobody in my family had a career. I was lucky if they had jobs, to be honest, let alone a career. And whilst I had strong female role models in my mum and my sister, those role models weren't about having careers or education or anything like that, really. So that was it. no big deal. I left school. And for the next few years, I really had to get on with looking after my little girl and kind of providing for her. And that meant having to do various jobs. And I'll be honest, I've had some really awful jobs. I have worked in a pie and peas stall in Leeds Market. I have worked in a factory packing vegetables for different supermarkets. And I think my favourite one was at the age of 18, working in a working men's club behind the bar, at a time when women weren't even allowed to buy drinks at that bar. So you can imagine how much fun that was. It was pretty grim. By the time I was 21, I'll be honest, I was feeling pretty done with life. I was, I'd survived all this childhood trauma. There'd been alcohol abuse and drug abuse, violence. One of my parents was in and out of prison. And I was in the middle of a really toxic and really difficult breakup, and I just didn't really think life had much to offer. But, and it was a big but, I had this small person that I was responsible for. And honestly, that saved my life, really, because I knew that no matter how bad things had been for me, that I had to make sure that she had a better life going forward. So that all sounds a bit grim and awful, but things did look up. I met my husband in 1997, and by the time I was 25, I was married. I had 2 more children and was a full-time stay-at-home mum, which is kind of what I wanted to be, but it turned out to not be as fun as I thought it might be. Following the death of my dad and some quite nasty postnatal depression, I realised that actually it was my life that was making me depressed, and that I needed to make some changes, and that I was the person that needed to make some changes. So it was about the time when the internet was becoming a thing. I sound really old when I say that, but honestly, I could barely turn on a computer at that point. If you wanted to do computing at school, when I was at school, you had to be in the top maths set. I wasn't in the top maths set, so I never really got anywhere near a computer. It certainly wouldn't have been within our budget and our household income to have a computer. So with a lot of encouragement from my family, I enrolled on a programme very similar to the Tech Mums programme. It was called a Women in IT programme, and it wasn't really IT as such. It was around office and business technology. So it was using computers to do stuff. And that was funded by the European Union, which was brilliant because it meant my travel was paid, my childcare was paid. I couldn't have done it without that financial support. And so off I went to college, and I absolutely loved it. I loved learning about technology, but it was not really the nuts and bolts. I loved what technology could do, and I really got the education bug. So I followed that up. I enrolled on an Access to Education course, and I redid my Maths English GCSE at the same time. And I just really got the bug for learning. So that led me to a life-changing opportunity, and something I just, I kind of not mapped out for myself. But in 2001, I got to enrol as an undergraduate at Leeds Beckett University, Leeds Metropolitan University as it was in them days, now Leeds Beckett. Embarked on 4 quite tricky years of juggling family life with studying for a degree in computing. It wasn't easy. I remember walking into my first big lecture, 200 cohort 200, probably less than a dozen women, certainly none that were married and had children, and spent a lot of time feeling like fish out of water. I had to work really hard. I found it really difficult, and all these young boys around me never sent up to lectures or tutorials, but always got really good marks. It was very frustrating. Group work was really difficult because they want to leave it till the last minute and then pull all-nighters, and I'm like, I've got to go home, I've got kids to pick up from school and nursery, there's no all-nighters for me. And I actually failed my second year. I had to repeat my second year, but I came close to giving up because it was really tough. But I've never been a quitter. I'm quite stubborn, and I think that's paid off because I kept going. And then in 2006, I graduated with a 2-1 in computing, which was absolutely amazing. And I still look back on my graduation as one of the best days of my life. Such a sense of achievement. So now I had this degree, and I knew I needed a job. And this is where it got a bit tricky, because spending 4 years with 200 young boys that were going into, you know, looking at jobs in the tech sector, made me feel really that maybe the tech sector wasn't a place for me. And at that point, as it's changed massively, it was all a bit, have you turned it off and on again, kind of geeks in the basement. So I set my heart on working in education. I applied for just about any job going, any university, college, school. I didn't care. Marketing, HR, I was willing to do it all. But it's quite difficult getting a job when you've got, you've got no work experience. So I did about 40 applications. I did about 15 interviews. The first one was awful, and I cried all the way home. It was horrible, but I got better and better. And then finally, I landed a job at the University of Leeds. It was the wrong job. It was an IT admin assistant. So not really kind of what I dreamed of for my first job coming out of university, but it was in the right place because it was in the IT department. And then I spent 18 months working in an all-male team who were absolutely amazing. They were brilliant to me. They were so nice to me and so kind, and had a fantastic manager. And I was really fortunate because I'd been employed as an admin assistant, but he let me do whatever I wanted. And I quickly got stuck in, and I found loads of things that I could get involved in: service improvement and service level management, and it was all about working with third parties. I mean, he absolutely let me fly. It was a little bit challenging, you know, because I was doing all this amazing work and really improving the services, and at that point I was being paid a third of the guys in the team, and it was a bit like, this doesn't really seem right. I'm going to have to do something about that. So when a new role in the department was advertised, I was kind of interested. Now, I was a grade 5 and these were grade 7, and universities are very quite hierarchical places, and everybody said, oh, you can't go from a grade 5 to a grade 7. It's not, and well, I don't like being told what I can do. It's that stubbornness comes in again, and I thought, well, nobody in the university has got these skills because it's a new job in a new area of IT service management, so there's nobody that's going to fit it perfectly. So I've got nothing to lose. So I applied, and I was really chuffed that I got proven everybody wrong because I was successful. So that was working in a different team, putting much more at the centre of this department, and I learned loads and loads about how IT services are delivered and how they're run, and I also got a really good, strong internal network. So I was chugging along there for about 18 months and loving it, but I really got ambitious by that point. I felt really I'd started to be aspirational, and I was ambitious for myself, and I had a massive student loan to pay off as well. But I knew the kind of next career step would involve line management, and although I'd done some of that in my retail, on paper it looked like I didn't have any experience. So I saw another opportunity. Our service manager was going on maternity, and I thought, well, I could look after that for a little bit, and I could get that management experience. Now, I had to fight quite hard to get that. I had to persuade them to give me the opportunity because I didn't have that management experience. But again, a really supportive manager that was willing to take a chance on me. And was successful, and actually I ended up doing that role for 5 years, and I got to build a really amazing team. And it's interesting looking back, as I was employed into that role, it was just as BYOD was kicking off, and that really started to change. So for those of you that don't know, BYOD was bring your own device, which seems a bit bonkers to say that nowadays, but way back in 2009, 2010, we were used to students turning up to universities wanting to connect laptops and tablets and phones, and it really changed the way, not just we were delivering support, but the kind of services that we had to offer. So spent 5 years there really working on changing that service and adapting to this new world of work. Built an amazing team, made some lifelong friends, won a few awards on there with the team, which was amazing, and was pretty much loving it. And then I'd also started to do some work in the wider sector through an organisation called USISA. I was really loving that. And then I was contacted by some colleagues at Leeds Beckett University who said, oh, we're doing a restructure, we've got these vacancies, I wondered if you'd be interested. And initial thought was, no, love the job. I'd really envisaged being at Leeds Uni for the rest of my life. And I went home that night and I just thought, you know, I've been saying that so long about that job. I love it. But when was the last time I actually stopped to reflect on that? And I realised actually when I did that reflection, although I loved the team, I was actually pretty bored by the work because I'd done everything that I'd wanted to do. And I had a great manager and she was going off bringing me back projects to kind of keep me going. But the reality was I'd got a bit stuck in a box. So if you'd have asked anybody if I was a good service desk manager, they would have said yes. But was anybody thinking about my next career or where I might be able to move or develop? No, not really. So I decided that it was time to move on. It was a bit of a wrench. And I remember on the last day, I cried so much. The team was just so embarrassed because I don't cry pretty, you know, it was like proper floods and snot and everything. And I was so upset thinking I'll never get this feeling again with this I've had with this team. I've like watched them grow and everything. But of course, since then I've learned that you do, and it's about the people you put around you, and you can always build those relationships, and actually the ones that are really important to you keep. So of all those people in those photographs, I'm still regularly in touch with quite a lot of them, and they are, you know, really, really lifelong friends. I think there's a girl I called Antonia. She came to my daughter's wedding. We are really good friends. Off I went to Leeds Beckett University. A bit of a strange experience. This is where I'd done my degree, and since I'd done my degree, I had to move around. So the building that I'm stood outside of in the bottom corner, that is the Grange. I don't know if any of you know the Leeds Beckett campus at Heading Leeds Beautiful. That was actually where I spent all my time studying. So I turned up for this new job right back where I started at the beginning. So it was a bit like homecoming. And I just had another really, really fantastic 4 years working with some brilliant teams, building some great services, continuing to widen my network and doing lots of work within the sector and not just in my own organisation, which is something I'm really passionate about. And just really enjoyed kind of working in the sector. But that ambition is still there. And I always say that starting your career at 32 means I've never stopped feeling like I've got to catch up. So that is my rocket fuel. I started at 32, so I'm you know, a good 10 years behind everybody else. I've got to catch up. I started to look around within my own university and within the university sector and realised actually if I wanted to continue to progress, then it was maybe time to look outside the sector, and that made me feel really sad and a little bit apprehensive. But I knew in my heart that that's what I was going to do. And I wasn't planning on doing it straight away, but I was thinking maybe I should go try and work for one of these big corporates, an Oracle or a KPMG or something like that, just to kind of experience it. But then through one of my networks, I was made aware of a job at the NHS Digital. And actually, when I started to look at it in terms of what the NHS Digital does, it's a much better fit for me. It sounds really cheesy and really corny, but I really want to be able to make a difference. And I think the closer you are to the services and the actual benefit that you deliver, the easier that is. And that's really, you know, you absolutely know what you deliver when you work in a university. And everybody in the organisation knows that. It's about learning and teaching and research and the impact that has. And the NHS Digital is the same. And in fact, what I've actually found is you're actually even closer to the services and to what you're delivering. And you can see on a daily basis the impact of some of the work that you're doing. So that was it. I joined my new department on 4th of May. It's been a bit weird doing an induction and new starts from behind the screen. But I've been made to feel really, really welcome. And I can't help but feel that I'm part of something really special. You know, certainly not like that from the outside looking into NHS Digital. This is a really amazing organisation, and NHS is an amazing organisation. But then when you're in it as well, it still does feel like that. So I just want to talk a little bit about impact then. As I said, I was the first person in my family to graduate, to go to university. But I like to think that my kind of love and passion for that has really had a kind of ripple effect. On the right-hand side in the picture with the sunnies, that's me with my eldest daughter. and she graduated from Yorkshire University with a 2-1 in law in 2014, and we just had the most amazing day. And then on the other side is my husband. Now, my husband left school at the age of 15 with absolutely not a single qualification, nothing, and went on to do an apprenticeship in plastering, and somehow managed to tumble into education, and is now a qualified teacher and a curriculum manager. But he also went back to university, and he graduated in 2015. And then in the middle, that's my middle daughter, Eloise. She was not a natural academic. She hated school. But she went to that graduation in 2014, and I think it just lit something in her as well. And so despite being told that she'd never be able to go to university because she wasn't academically gifted enough, she actually graduated in 2018, because she's also a bit stubborn like me. You never tell Eloise she can't do anything. And then finally, it'll be cross because I haven't got his picture up, but my youngest, he's in Leeds University, and he's just finished his second year. So that's for me is what education is about. It's that ripple effect, you know, and it's not just that they went to university. We were, you know, at the time I went to university, we were living on a really inner city council estate. It was quite rough. The kids didn't have any freedom. We had to keep them quite close to home to keep them safe, and you know, getting that university degree just really changed our prospects as a family. And it's just meant that I've been able to raise my children to have aspirations, and they'll raise their children to have aspirations, and that's the ripple effect. And I see a lot of stuff in the press these days about value for money in education and about the careers and stuff like that, but the real value for money in education is that ripple effect, and it's that raising of aspirations, and it's that opening doors and opening eyes. It's not necessarily a pound sign against the job that you get, and I think that gets a bit overlooked sometimes. So that's kind of my story. I just wanted to share with you some of the stuff I've kind of learned along the way that that kind of helped me in my career. I think the first thing is to say that bad things happen, they happen to you, but they don't get to define who you are. And it took me until my sort of mid to late 20s to understand that I did have to be defined by what had happened to me in my childhood and my early teens, and that my path wasn't set in stone, and that actually I could influence that, and I could actually challenge that. And I think that's been kind of one of my key learning lessons. In terms of the job, you don't have to be good at everything, and I've really struggled with that for a long time. I like to be the expert. I'm a bit of a bossy boots. I like to know everything, and I like to have the answers for people. But the wider the role, the more difficult that is, and it's that breadth and depth. And actually, when you've got a really good team, you don't need to know everything. You just need to trust the people around you and let that stuff go. And by doing that, you're actually giving them opportunity, and you're empowering them. So that's really a top tip there. Experience doesn't just come from a job. When I was applying for all these jobs just after I got my degree, I just felt I had no work experience, and that therefore meant I had no experience. But actually I had a lot of life experience. I had all the stuff that I'd learned in retail, which was about customer service and people. I'd learned to be really resilient and really robust because of all the awful stuff that had happened when I was younger and the challenges I faced. And I had the skills that come with being a mum as well, and so I had all this stuff, but I'd never articulated that in any of the application forms. But there's not a separation between the home you and the work you. You are a whole person, and all your experiences make you that whole person, and you can bring some of that to you. That doesn't mean sharing all your personal stuff at work, but it just means you've probably got a much broader skill set than you actually realise if you look beyond just the stuff you do in your 9 to 5. And then the other one is understand your value and know what your unique selling point is. So I joined IT in 2006. I was 32, and I didn't really have any career experience. So I thought that you kind of played a role at work. And I looked around and I could see all these, in terms of the leadership that I had, they were very traditional, white, male, middle class suits. And I thought I needed to emulate that because I thought that's what IT was about. But you know what? IT doesn't need more white male middle class men in suits. And that actually coming from a working class background and being a woman and having some of the experiences I've had as a child and as a young woman, they made me think differently, and it's that diversity of thought and that diversity of experience is actually my value. And it goes down to little things. I used to be really embarrassed about my accent. Universities can be quite posh places, and I used to be really self-conscious of it, but now I just really embrace it, and I'm really proud of that, and it is part of, I introduce myself as that northern girl, and that's part of my USP, and you can bring that to work. You don't have to kind of hide that. So there's some of the things I've learned along the way. Top tips for anybody looking at a career in technology or any career really is, and the first one is find an advocate. I think we talk loads and loads about mentoring and coaching. But actually you need more than that, and you need an advocate, and an advocate is more than a mentor and a coach. An advocate is somebody that will support you, that will promote you, that will push you, that will look out for opportunities, and loads of people are willing to do that for you, but you've just got to ask. They won't always know. So look around, look in your circle, look in your network, and see if you can find that person that is going to be an advocate for you. Don't be afraid to ask, and that's don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't know the answer. I've been doing a lot of that over the last 7 weeks as I've started to get to grips with healthcare and technology in healthcare, because it's a whole new world to me. But also, if you want something, don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing that can happen is say no. If somebody says no, that's not for you, or I can't give that to you, or not on this occasion. But at least you'll have no regrets because you asked. The worst thing is to not ask and then always just think, well, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't. So, and the more you do it and the more you practice it, the easier it gets. The other one then is never compromise your core values. And that means that if somebody, either at work or in your life generally, if somebody's asking you to do something that you're not comfortable with, don't do it. It will never, ever take you in the direction that you want to go, and it will never lead to good outcomes. So go with your gut instinct, and often if it's coming from management or leadership at work, and somebody's asked you something and it doesn't feel quite right, chances are they've not explained it to you properly, or they've not really understood. So don't be afraid to go back and challenge that. Say yes and figure it out later. That doesn't mean being a yes person and saying yes to everything. It's about being open to opportunities and not worrying too much about how you'll do it, and so I've done a lot over the years in terms of outside the day job, and a lot of people say, well, how do you plan it in and stuff, and the answer is I don't. I say yes and then I work out afterwards how I'm going to do it, and that is an approach that works really well for me. It might not work best for everybody, but for me, I'll say yes and I'll figure it out later, and I'll juggle some stuff around it. And then the other one is be the person that people want to work with. And again, that is not about saying yes to everything, but you would be surprised how far a little bit of enthusiasm and a little bit of positivity can go. If you enthuse about something and you are genuinely positive about it, people really warm to that. And then what happens then is they remember you. And then the next time something comes up, the person that pops in their head, and honestly, that's opened so many doors to me and given me so many opportunities. And it's almost like a snowball effect. Once you get one and you have a real good experience, and you make people feel good about it, then another one comes along and another one comes along, and it's brilliant. And then part of that is as you go on that snowball is making sure that you support and promote others, and that you bring them along with you. It's that thing, isn't it, of giving back and offering a hand down to help somebody up. And it's just making sure you do that consciously, and just reflecting as when was the last time you gave somebody a bit of a step up, or you gave them a lift, or whatever. And it can be small things and it can be big things, but for me it's the bit about that I love the most about leadership is being able to develop others and give them opportunities and kind of watch them make the most of that. So they're my top tips. This is the final slide. I am really proud of my career today, and also feel really fortunate and really lucky. My jobs and my the kind of outreach and stuff I've done have taken me to some brilliant places. I've been to Florida, I've been to Chicago, been to Belfast, been to Madrid, been to Frankfurt, I've been up and down the country, and that's not just about the places you visit, that's the people that you get to meet and the experiences that you get to have. One of my favourites was actually meeting Dr. Sue Black at an exhibition a couple of years ago. I just, she's absolutely amazing, and one of those people that you watch from afar and you're in admiration, and when you meet her, she's even better. So that's it for me, really. I hope you found it interesting. I hope some of you have got a few things you can take away. If I'm happy to take any questions, you can find me on Twitter. I love Twitter, but you can also look me up on LinkedIn as well. I'm happy to broaden my network and always meet new people doing different stuff. So that's over to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Sally. That was so insightful, really inspiring. It's amazing to hear your career path, because I think sometimes when we're in our 20s or whatever, we're like, oh, we must have done this, this, this and this to get to this. And it's not at all like that. You can follow kind of what you think is right and you'll get there, really. That's what I'm taking from it anyway. Yeah. And like you say, university, you sometimes feel like it's not really prepared you for the world, but I think it has. I think it helps you to think and gives you opportunities. I did art and I'm here now, so who knows how that happened.
Yeah, it's not just about the academic, it's the people you meet and the experiences that you have, and it's your view of the world. University changed my view of the world. I didn't realise how narrow my view of the world was until I actually got to university, and I just think that goes so underrepresented in the media. I feel like the media is quite happy to bash universities quite a lot at the moment, but they are amazing places that do amazing work.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting a lot of love in the chat for you. Holly is feeling emotional and she'd like to have a virtual tea with you sometime, if that's okay.
More than happy. Just DM me on Twitter, I'll look me up on LinkedIn. That's fine.
A question from Eleanor. It's been great hearing about your journey into tech, Sally, but where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I don't know. I think the job I've taken on is much bigger than I realised when I took it on, and it's probably going to take me a good 3 to 5 years to be successful in this one. There's no definite career path. I would like to consider being CEO or IT director at some point, but I'm not set in stone with that. It's more about making a difference, finding work that's challenging and interesting, and working with amazing people. At one point, I would like to try working outside public sector just to see what it's like, but then working in public sector is so great, maybe I never will. I don't know. I'd like to do a bit more travel. We didn't really travel much with having such a family so young, and we didn't really have the money and stuff. But so I'd like to do some travel and not just be work focused, which I've been for quite a long time. So
yeah, fantastic. Natasha has a question, and that's Natasha from Empowering Women with Tech, which I will just go into a little bit later. So she in her experience, she says universities lack a lot of BAME representation, especially in tech. What do you think the sector can do to amend this?
So they don't just it's not just lack of BAME, it's lack of any kind of diversity. It is changing slightly. I think the recruitment processes need to change massively. They are they're very traditional, and I think some universities are starting to look at that. I think bringing the student body into the recruitment processes is really important. At the end of the day, in terms of the student population, they don't come really that much more diverse, and then that's not represented in the in the academics or the professional services. So I think bringing the students in to support the recruitment practices. I think we've got a bit of an image problem. I think universities have got an image problem, and technology's got an image problem in terms of the type of work they offer. So I think working on making universities, marketing them as a desirable place to work, because they are amazing places to work, but I don't think that's I think they're seen as very hierarchical, which they are, or a lot of them are. So I think it's looking at all those aspects, and things have got to change, really. And I think we're starting to see some of it. I think the Black Lives Matter movement, that's doing things like getting statues removed in colleges and stuff like that. I think that's going to go a lot further, and I think it will start to have an impact, but it's not happening as quickly as it should, which is a frustration. But from somebody that sat on the other side of the recruitment process, it's so frustrating about the lack of BAME applicants that we get and the lack of women applicants that we get. So it's starting it starts right at the pipeline. It's not necessarily just the recruitment process that's broken. I think it's the aspirations of wanting to work in tech and wanting to work in universities.
Yeah, it's something that I think every organisation is going to have to really listen, look to, and make sure that we are making recruitment open for everyone as much as possible. So Natasha also says Sally for PM. So yeah, I'll vote for you.
I don't know how I feel about. I'm having to stay away from politics now. I'm a civil servant. I'm finding that quite hard.
Sarah Kennedy, I feel very lucky to be in your network, and you've given me great support and equally challenge over the years.
Yeah.
What are your tips for growing a network for anyone starting out?
I would say get on Twitter. I know it's not for everybody, but that has been a massive source of career development and professional development and network building for me. But that's a whole other session that I can do another time. But get on Twitter and start looking up professionals within your sector and women, if in tech, if that's the kind of network you're wanting to get into. Go to conferences, go to events. We're really, really lucky in Leeds. I know they're not on at the moment, but we've got a really active digital community. So get out there and get speaking to people. Try and find people that are maybe not, not just like you, but are different, because they can introduce you to different sectors and different circles, and things like that. And just be brave. But also I think networking is remembering that I had quite a bad experience at a conference in 2014, because I went thinking I've got to network, and I ended up paralysing myself because I was so it was not my crowd. It was lots of very, very senior IT people, and I got myself in a real state. But so go into those networking opportunities knowing that you've got something to offer as well. So it's a two-way process, and you're not just you're not just going out and trying to grab all the people because I need to build my network. If you go in with an offering of thinking, well, I've got this to talk about, and that, I've got this experience to share, then I think it takes the pressure off a little bit. But social media is a great place. LinkedIn can be hard work to build a professional network through LinkedIn, because there's a lot of rubbish that you have to wade through, but practice makes perfect.
Fab tips. It's 1:00, so we've only got another minute or so. So we've got another question. As a recent master's graduate in IT management, what further advice would you give to new graduates? And it's a great talk, by the way. That's from Abdi, I think.
Yeah. So it would be to get out and get some experience, and it would be, so whether you can get paid employment, or whether it's even doing a bit of work for some community projects, but get out there and get some experience. Keep building on your industry knowledge. You get a lot of the theoretical stuff in the university, but make sure you're reading the kind of publications and stuff that are coming outside of the sector, so the forums. And again, social media is a great place for just picking up what's going on in the wider industry. Think about what sets you on fire, what you're really passionate about, and try and look for roles in that space, because if you find what sets you on fire, it doesn't feel like work. But networking as well, and looking for that advocate as well, somebody that can help you find opportunities or introduce you to other opportunities.
Fab tips, excellent. So those are all the questions so far in chat. Like I mentioned, Natasha's on the call, and she runs Empowering Women with Tech, which is a fantastic network in Leeds. They have talks from global women in tech and really good subjects, but also at the moment the mentoring scheme is open. So if you want to become a mentor, or if you want to mentor, then please do have a little look at that. I will share the links again after the talk. So I think, unless anyone else has any other questions, I think that is the end of today. Thank you so much to our speakers. Sarah, for talking about Dementia Pathway with Leeds Libraries and 100% Digital. Absolutely fascinating and wonderful work. And thank you so much to Sally. Absolutely wonderful. It's so good to hear from someone and be so honest about their career path as well. It's not always easy, but if you're stubborn like Sally, you can do it.